Hello and welcome everybody to Soul Nectar Tribe May Gathering.
Hi, everyone.
As part of our May 2024 Soul Nectar Tribe Gathering. And so welcome everybody. Hi, Erica. Hi,
Erica.
Paul. We're
Hi,
excited.
Paul.
People will be coming in. As they come in, we'll let them in, but we wanted to go ahead and get started.
Mhm.
So we've been doing these all year now, and we've been having so much fun because we've been picking these books that we could learn so much from.
Yep. Push you to your edge and then gives you an opportunity to take it to the next level. And as it gives you that opportunity to bring in your intentions, even knowing that we're going to talk about this gives us an opportunity to be improved and exalted in this process. So we love doing this because we always like going to the next level. So
yeah, it's really fun. We started off in January. For those who've been with us, we started off in January. I'm just going to turn this down a little bit. We started off in January with The Mastery of Self by Don Miguel Ruiz. And that was powerful.
Yeah, senior.
Powerful way to kick off. And then we moved into The Mastery of Love, but we got so much out of The Mastery of Love the first month, and we only got through half the book. So we said, let's do it again. So we did it the second month in March. So we did February, March. And then April, we just went,
catch our breath.
And so now we're here, finally back again with you guys. So excited. Welcome, Donna. Welcome, Tara. So we're really excited to be here to talk about this next book. So I got this book years ago.
The 5 Levels of Attachment.
5 Levels of Attachment. I actually have a hardcover. I got it signed by Miguel.
This is Ruiz Jr. Correct?
Junior.
So this is the 4 agreements. The father, his responsibility was bringing a lot of the Toltec teachings, and his mother also traveled the country, as he describes in the 5 Levels of Attachment. And they all were both spiritual teachers. Well, the son grew up with both of these parents, and he wrote his own
in this Toltec tradition. And so he's written lots of different books, but this 5 Levels of Attachment book, I remember when this came out because he actually took the training or went through apprenticeship with Heather Ashamara, who was one of my teachers. And so he was also going through that training with her. And of course, he's the son of Don Miguel Ruiz. So, but like really cool. I remember being at the book signing and meeting him and shaking his hand and buying his book. And I read this back then. And so it was really great to get to read it again, to check it out. And from this level of perspective, because I got this it says January 7th, 2013. So I've had this book for quite a while. Yeah, it's just so powerful.
Well, and the cool and fun thing after that is both of us got to meet and work with not only Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., but Heather Ashamara. They both were running a couples retreat in Colorado. So, and that was 3 years later in 2016. It was really awesome. And it really brings in those intentions. This intentionality just ripples through all aspects of your life.
Really powerful. This work is really powerful. I'm just going to go take a look at the chat here. And the grandmother actually was a Toltec master. She was a curandera. And it talks about that in the 5 Levels of Attachment. His grandmother, is Don Miguel Ruiz's mother. So Miguel Ruiz Jr.'s grandmother. So powerful. And you'll get to hear a bit of her wisdom tonight because we'll share one of the things she asked. Welcome, Nancy. So glad you're here. So we're really excited. This book is awesome. 5 Levels of Attachment. If you don't have it yet, you can get this on Amazon or Audible. There's an Audible for it.
Yep.
I have the hardcover book, but I got this in person. But like really great book. So tonight we're going to talk about what are attachments and how do they form our reality? And then we're going to go through the levels of attachment as described in the book. We're going to touch on them because obviously we have like about 50 minutes together. So, we can't explain everything. It's good to read the book. It's about how long is the Audible? Maybe
that's only like about almost 4 hours.
So almost 4 hours.
Under 4 hours.
You can just put it in the car and listen to it, and just zone out to it.
It's one of these things that you can actually play it and then you play it again and then you play it again. You layer over it. It's like that.
Because it needs to sink in.
It's the goodness that keeps on giving goodness.
So the levels we're going to go through, the level 1 is the authentic self. Level 2 is the preference. Then level 3 is the identity. Level 4 is internalization. And level 5 is fanaticism. And so we're going to touch on what all those things are. And then we're going to touch on how do you move through the levels back to the authentic self. And you might be surprised at where you are, in that, because I was reading it again, even yesterday and today, and going, wow, I've got some of these levels. I wonder how attached I am to some of this identity stuff.
Yeah, it creeps up.
It does.
Really does. And these are different aspects of your life. If you were to just look at just the aspect of how you do your professional work, in even multiple forms of work. For instance, I noticed attachments that showed up in my martial arts work with how I practice my forms, or with being a network engineer with how the process is supposed to be followed, right? Like you notice a lot in the corporate world. And then I noticed not attachment to my work as a massage therapist. There are certain parameters that are similar, but there's this giving and there's this sharing and there's this opening that requires me to not be attached to a complete structure. So it's easier not to be attached in there for me. So I mean, this is a good thing to ask yourself in your life. What layers do you have of attachment and where does it show up?
Yeah, so we're going to be giving you guys opportunities actually to do that, like in the chat, to share with us as we explain or describe things. Like, find yourself in it, and we're going to do some sharing in the chat, so you'll have a chance to call yourself out, and we'll call ourselves out, and we'll all do this together.
If we call ourselves out, that means you have a higher chance or probability of actually working through the pattern a lot faster.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what are attachments and how do they form our reality? So this is part of the grandmother's wisdom that came through. One of the questions repeated through the whole text is, and this came directly from her mouth, are you using knowledge, or is knowledge using you? Wow. That's a good question. Are you using knowledge, or is knowledge using you? And in this first section where Miguel is kind of setting up the context that he's going to be teaching, he says, throughout life, we constantly narrate or commentate on everything we do, say, touch, smell, taste, and hear. As natural storytellers, we continuously keep the plot moving forward, sometimes missing millions of subplots that are developing all on their own. And that's because of that inner narrator. Anybody relate to the inner narrator? Like, it's constantly saying, hi, this is, oh, I don't like the way she did that. Or I wonder if she could do that better. Or,
or I wonder what I'm going to eat for dinner. But
or what am I going to, and how long is this going to take?
And there's the completeness, realizing that this pattern steals away my presence. Because I'm thinking about what I'm going to do later. I'm going to think about something that happened 30 years ago. And
it keeps us from, and he says, instead of taking an experience for what it is, we create a story to make it fit our beliefs. That's what ends up happening,
which is that level
instead of just experiencing the thing, we like make a story about it and we try to shoehorn it into the story, and we miss what's actually happening.
Yeah, I thought that level 3 was the very beginning of, when I checked in, okay, what levels do I notice that there's this emotional pull? So I had to do a check-in with myself, which is a part of what we're doing today. But this check-in is, by the time I got level 1, just fine. Level 2, just fine. A little something. Level 3 is the very beginnings of the building blocks of being attached to the outcome. That's where I got hooked. And around 4, I didn't know I was hooked, and it was starting to pull me in. And then by 5, it's like, oh my God, this is not me right now. So yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to go over this. So he goes on to say in the beginning, whatever we become attached to can begin to shape our future experiences, because, we have the reticular activating system that's constantly pulling to us what we expect to see. And so these attachments and these beliefs, they can shape our future experiences, and they can limit our perception of what exists outside of our vocabulary. So like he says, like blinders on a horse, our attached beliefs limit our vision, and this in turn limits our perceived direction in life. And the stronger our level of attachment, the less we can see, like the blinders are really on. We can only see this. So this is this whole point of doing this work is to open up those blinders, right? So that we can experience more of what's actually happening in truth. But what happens is that our point of view creates our reality. And when we're stuck in our beliefs, our reality becomes rigid, stagnant, and oppressive. Anybody have an experience of that or know somebody where it's like, it's so rigid?
Yeah.
Or like you're just inflexible and intolerant?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I've been intolerant myself. Anybody else been intolerant? Like I'm entrenched in my perspective. Like it's not correct what you're saying.
then there's the mulling it over to legitimize that I had that moment, to make it, it's like, well, I had to bring up my inflexibility at that moment because of ...
Yeah. So there's also justifications, right, for our behaviors.
Yeah.
And so, he talks about we become bound to our attachments because we've lost our ability to recognize that we have a choice. We actually have a choice to be free of them. And we become bound to our attachments because attachment is also linked to identity. This is where it gets tricky. When your beliefs and your attachments form your identity, it gets really hard to change. Because if you change that belief or that perspective, it changes your identity. And if you change your identity, it's like you're dying. So, your life feels threatened because of a belief. And that's when we know we're really in it, we become fanatical, or at the very least internalized. So when we are attached at the level of identity, he says, the who I am becomes more directly linked with knowledge, or the what I know. So as the level of attachment increases, the identity, the who I am, gets more and more directly linked with knowledge, the what I know. So let's just give an example. Like if I was a physicist, world renowned, and had all the letters after my name, I might be in that category of this is who I am, and that's because of what I know. So that might be an example. And if I was really attached to that identity, it might be hard for me to have any other identity. Like, oh, I'm just a person in this neighborhood. Like I might live all of my life from that identity of I'm the physicist that's well regarded, right? Mm. So, and that can be anything, any level of attachment. It could be being a mother. It could be, being a spouse. It could be anything in your life that you're really attached to. Because he says, when we believe in something so strongly that we lose awareness of the authentic self within the stories and comments of the internal narrators, we are allowing our preconceptions to make our decisions for us. So therefore, it's important to be aware of where we are in the scale of attachment with any particular belief, because with awareness, we can regain the power to make our own decisions. We can regain the power of choice. So we're going to do a little group exercise. So just take a moment, like what beliefs do you have that become attachments and have formed your identity? Like for me, part of my identity is being a messenger. Part of my identity is being a medicine woman. And so is that identity rigid and fixed? It's definitely in there. So what identity have you formed that when you introduce yourself to someone, it's the words you put after I am. So if I was going to describe to you guys who I am Kerri Hummingbird. So my name, right? I am a medicine woman. I am a mother. I am a mentor. I am a messenger, right? I am a mom. I am a wife. Like I might have those kinds of things, right? Or I am a best-selling author. I might throw that in. So what do you put after I am? And just put that in the chat. I'm going to go look over here and then see if I can see the chat. An artist and a researcher, retired nurse. Yes, Paul, known as tunnel vision. Absolutely. I couldn't see that before.
The blinders.
Yep. Reiki master, retired nurse. Anything else anybody wants to share? And how it, so when you put it on the list, whatever you place in the list, starting a new path. Well, that's an opening.
Well, I also like how Tara said that you got to have a story, and everyone seems to want a story.
Well, we're storytellers. That's what we are.
Well, yeah. And so that goes back to a tradition that I had learned in my studies, that it's supposedly started around a fire. I mean, how long has humanity been with fire, right? So we can't track how far. Millions of years, it's said, right? Hundreds of thousands of years, probably. And we had to figure out some sort of way to keep each other entertained in the middle of this heat or this cold or this event, or while we're cooking, or because we're hungry and we don't have food, or, as a harvesting period, some sort of almost beta-like task. We kind of just throw that in there.
Yeah. So we tell stories about life, and our brains are constant storytelling. Okay, Erica, a daughter, a mother, an aunt, a sister, a doctor, a healer, a friend. Awesome. Okay, so you can see that anything after I am is a way to kind of go deeper. And just notice the next time you're introducing yourself to someone, what you say. It's just an interesting thing to question yourself. And so what you qualify also as mine, and we laugh about this all the time because I do say mine a lot. I'll be like, that's mine, or this is mine.
Anyone seen Finding Nemo?
So we have fun with this. And he'll say, it's our house.
Mine.
He'll correct me.
Mine.
Say, it's my house. It's our house. So you also want to look at what you claim is yours, like my or mine. And this also is like an attachment. And in the book, Don Miguel shares a story of his daughter who was really upset. She was young and they were moving. And she was like, but this is my friend and my school and my teacher. And she was just really upset about having to leave all of that. And she was only 5. But as soon as she got to the new place, she was like, my room. So the my can change. What we say is mine can also shift and change, right? If it's not too deeply buried in our identity.
I want to ask you a question that connects dots with this. And this also is one of those mysteries that people get in their relationships, right? So what is it that we really can own, that's really ours, that can't be removed from us when we pass away?
Well, I mean, I think that's the first attachment, which is the authentic self. Yeah. So that's
another one that popped up for me was our thoughts. And that's even implied to be shared. But if we emitted it from our own field, it is coming from the authentic self, expressing itself by the level of attachment number 2, right?
Well, let's explore further, because maybe or maybe not, right? Because we don't know where sometimes those thoughts come from. And they might come from our environment, right? Yep. And so in the authentic self, in level 1, he talks about is that you're enjoying the game for what it is. And he uses the analogy of a soccer game throughout this whole thing. But the game, you could also think of it like when little kids get together and they're going to play a game together of make-believe, they get together and they all decide what's going to happen. And then they all take on a different role. And then they just start playing. And then everything takes off from there. And it just like in the moment changes, flexes, moves around, right? And they're not attached to anything until somebody gets upset. But they're over that pretty quickly. Usually they'll work it out. But when we become adults, we get more and more and more rigid. And then we're not really playing the game because we've really lost touch with who we actually are. Because we've accumulated all of these labels, all of this knowledge that gets placed behind our name. We've accumulated this now, and we don't want to let it go because it's formed our worth. And as we go through this, you'll see like how it all works. But when we start off and we're born, we're just the authentic self. For a long time, we're just a little kid.
Pretty present too.
We're present, we're playing games, we have fun, we're willing to, today I'll be the witch, tomorrow I'll be the cat. I don't care. Like, it's just fun. And I never like go away from it thinking I'm the witch permanently. I just go right now. And then as soon as I take the hat off, now I'm a fairy princess. I put that one on. So we're more fluid, and we enjoy the game for what it is. In this moment, we can enjoy a moment in time without any real attachment. We just enjoy our life. Now that's like when we're Zen, right? Like that's when we're accessing our authentic self. There's not a lot of mind chatter, and we're just kind of being with it. Or if there is mind chatter, we're just not associating or attaching to it. We're just letting it float by. That's that Zen place of the authentic self. We're in touch with something that feels larger than just this body or this lifetime. And it's free. It's liberated. And we remember that we're the one who smiles behind the mask. We're the one who's the divine cosmic being. Those are not his words, Miguel's words, but just my kind of integration of that. And so have any of you ever had a contact or a moment of contact with that, with your authentic self, with that one that has no names, is known by any name you would give it, that's not attached to what you call it, and is just present, breathing you? Has any of you have that experience of that part of yourself?
And I see what you're saying there, Tara, about being afraid to share because we can be judged.
Yeah, we're going to find out why as we move through this.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Saying we. Yeah,
instead
you also
of
shared instead of I.
Yeah. And I was playing with Kerri in that, because she is ever excellent when it comes to being the I place, and communicates really well in the I place. That takes a lot of mental discernment and a lot of awareness. And then there's the play on the other side, is like, what's yours? Mine. What's ours? Oh yeah.
Yeah, we laugh about Nemo. Mine. Anyway, it's funny to us. Okay, so yeah, the thoughts are in the field and we pick up on them. Absolutely. Yeah, so sometimes when we're, if we're on plant medicine or something like that, we can access this much easier. Or if we're like really good with the meditation practice, we can access this part of us that's just really not attached to anything. It's just enjoying the experience. And sometimes you might even find yourself wandering on a Sunday afternoon and just kind of get, just not really with any agenda, and just enjoying the sights and the sounds. And maybe you're visiting a new city and you're like, wow, this is really interesting. I'm really enjoying this. That's also your authentic self, that part of you that's just wandering and free and enjoying what you're experiencing. That's sensing. Yeah, that's that part too.
And the past, like Donna was saying, the past just brushes with it. So this is brushing with these experiences, but you're not those experiences. You're not assigning a meaning to them yet.
Yeah. And so the next level of attachment, moving on from the authentic self, is preference. So instead of just enjoying the game, you root for one of the teams. And he says, you realized that if you invest a little more of yourself by identifying a preference, the emotional roller coaster makes the game more exciting. And this is true. When we watch a game where we're rooting for one team, it's exciting, because we're invested. We want that team to win. And it's like, yeah, you can kind of enjoy that competition, and you can feel more during the game just by being invested in one team or the other. It's not dispassionate. It's like, oh, I want this team to win.
Oh yeah. See that in martial arts a very, very often amount of time. You're thinking about, okay, well, I want this person to win because right after that, I'm about to assign a meaning to it.
Yeah, you have your own stories about why you want them to win.
And then I begin defending it, saying it's either like me or it's different from me, but it's cool. And then see that I'm creating more attachment at that point.
Yeah, and our relationship with it. So at this level, preference is simply in the moment. Like you express a preference in the moment, and if that's not available, you'll move on to something else. And at the end of the game, you leave it all behind. You don't take it further than the game. The experience is still the experience. Maybe you have a costume party and your preference is you want to wear the princess costume. And so you do. But like if you didn't have the princess costume, but they had the witch, you'd be like, okay, that could be fun too. And then you just do that. So you're not really You're not identifying as it, but you're like open to a new experience. And you have a little bit of a preference. If it's not available, it's not a big deal. That's preference. But level 3 identity, it starts to get a little bit blurrier, because at identity level 3, you now are a committed fan of one of your teams. Or when you go to the costume party, you're always going to be the witch, and you're really not open to being anything else. That's your role, and you're going to do it. And he says, your team winning or losing partially defines your character beyond the 90 minutes of the game. You feel elated when your team wins, and when your team loses, you feel disappointed, and that might affect some of your day. You're still, though, willing to be friends with someone who identifies with a different team. Okay, so at this level of identity, level 3, you're still willing to have friends who disagree with you or who want a different team to win. But you do start to bring the team to other environments that have nothing to do with the game, like your job. So you start to blur the lines of like where it's relevant, because it's now not just that soccer on the soccer field, it's now part of your identity. So you take that with you in other environments where it's not really part of that environment, but you make it part of the environment because of your identity. So that's level 3.
That's around where I got stuck. And
anybody do that with anything?
Something else happened for me around late level 2. As I checked in, I realized that not only did I decide that I liked something, I had to decide how and why, the because part, like I was saying earlier, but it also got to a place, this pressure of needing to explain it and share it with someone else, and explain and share what they're experiencing through their part of the process, and then connect mine with theirs, and then have this conversation, this link, this opportunity to discuss. So it actually brought a feeling of camaraderie and oneness with the rest of the world through this proxy of this one other particular person who likes the same sports team, right? Or likes the same martial artist, or, what have you. But then I started realizing that in the process of learning how I'm going to explain it and share it with people, I realized that I became even more invested into the why. I noticed there was more emotion that popped up and bubbled up. And you know what? This is the reason why. And I'm going to tell everybody about this part. That's when I started getting hooked.
Yeah. And we may not realize it right away. It's kind of sneaky, like when you have a preference, you're willing to change, it's just a preference, but you're okay if it doesn't work out that way. But when it starts to become part of identity, you kind of want it to work out. Like, let's say another example. Let's say my favorite restaurant, is the Grove. It's not, but let's just say it is. My favorite restaurant is the Grove. And I want to go have my Mother's Day at the Grove. And then I'm not able to book a reservation. And now my Mother's Day is ruined because I can't have my Mother's Day at my favorite restaurant. So that's an example of identity. It's no longer a preference. If it was just a preference, I would be fine going someplace else that there are reservations. So I would be able to change and still have a wonderful Mother's Day. So that's just another way of looking at it. Now, when you get to level 4, internalization, your team is an intrinsic part of your identity. And we all know people that have like the jerseys and they wear them to work, and, they like talk about their team, and it's like the only team is the best team, and they'll like support that team for decades. And like, that's what he's talking about. Like, it's part of your life story. And the story of victory and defeat of that team is now about you personally. So if your team loses, it's about your self-esteem. If your team wins, it's about your worthiness. And then you'll kind of laud it over other people, so that's when people razz each other, because it gets in, because the team is their internalized as part of their identity. So it's a way to kind of razz somebody else, like, oh, you guys lost, you suck, and that kind of stuff. And you won't talk to people of an opposing team. Like, nah, I can't even talk to you. You're wrong. And if you talk to them, you get into a huge argument because you're right and they're wrong.
So there's a saying that
you can see how this applies to so many other topics.
Well, there was something Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. mentioned in there too. This interesting statement. He said, with dogma around the fourth, like what Kerri just described, and it becomes dogmatic to the point where the religion, the practice of religion, becomes more important than God. That's a really big statement he made in there.
And that's really at the next level of fanaticism. But yeah, I mean, it's really self-importance is what gets tied up in here in this level of internalization, because we're internalizing the identity. And this external thing is now internalized as part of my worth, right? So I am tied up and invested in this thing outside myself for my worth, but I have no control over how this thing outside myself does, right? So I'm giving up my power to this external experience as part of my well-being, as part of my, my life story. And he says your self-importance correlates with your attachment. Your life and attachment are so blurred that everything starts to revolve around this team. Everything starts to revolve around your belief. And you believe that anyone who doesn't agree with you is wrong. And you prefer the company of those who think like you. So I just want to bring up this piece because this is that I like-minded people conversation. And we have that all the time as spiritual people. Like, I want to hang out with like-minded people. But you'll hear other people also say that about themselves. Like, whatever people have, internalized as part of their identity, they'll use this conversation of, I want to hang out with like-minded people. And I don't want to hang out with not like-minded people. So I found myself in this because I've heard people having those conversations, and I've had those conversations. And yeah, you've internalized your attachment to such an extent that it's become a condition of self-acceptance or accepting other people. And then you begin to impose this image on the people you love, as well as those you interact with daily. So I'm reminded of this time when my dad was ill.
Oh.
And I was just starting my path as a healer, and I was doing all this energy healing, and I was learning all these miraculous, amazing things. And my dad came down with this rare form of leukemia. And as soon as he came down with it, it was the same one my grandmother had just passed away from, not 3 months before. And all of a sudden he's got it. And I'm like, Dad, I think you got an attachment from grandma. Like, I think we need to do a healing, because I'd just been learning about this in class. And he's like, no, I don't believe in any of that. I'm going to go get chemo. I'm already going to the Mayo Clinic. I'm not interested in this. This is not my path. And I was so hurt and offended. I was so upset. And it actually interrupted our ability to talk to each other. And it wasn't until I realized that I was doing that, because I had internalized my path as, the correct path, not only for me, but for others. Once I realized I had done that, then I went and I sat with him and I just listened. And I remember that day, he really appreciated that I just listened. And he said, I noticed that you're just listening, and I appreciate that. And I know you really believe strongly in this energy stuff, and I'm glad it's helping you, but my path is this, and I need you to follow in my life. So that was a moment of me making a choice to value my relationship with my dad more than any self-worth I was getting from internalizing this identity as a healer. Right? So just something to just consider if you've also done this, have your relationships been impacted, for example, during our pandemic, over your belief for the vaccine or against the vaccine? Were your relationships impacted or torn apart because of that internalized belief system?
Or political conversations.
Republicans or Democrats. Or this person's wonderful or he's a demon, so
complete polars.
We know who that is.
There's no spectrum.
There's this he's came to save us and save America, or he's a demon. So either one, right? So these polarized ideas, and that can cause us to break our relationships because we've internalized a perspective as who we are. And once you make it part of your identity, you'll defend it. more vehemently. And in this part, you'll defend it by, I only want to hang out with like-minded people.
It's kind of how wars get started, aren't they?
And this is what's happening over there, and that's resulting in, so we're going to talk about level 5, but have you guys had this? You have this realization of yourself even now that like, oh, wow, I think I've internalized a belief system that's keeping me from being able to talk to certain people or being able to relate to them as humans. I think
there was one particular belief system that I held on to that I didn't remember that I held on to that still had an energetic charge within me. So I was 9 years old. And this one particular day, my dad, who was just trying to watch out for me, he just wanted to care for me and make sure that I didn't get into trouble. He said, "Son, this world's not ready for you yet. So proceed as if this world's not ready for you yet. That means don't blast the world. Don't go all the way out. Don't be all of yourself. Too big, too much. The world can't handle it." Anyone else have that conversation show up? I'm too big, too much.
Well, that's an internalized belief that could totally shape your way you live your life.
It did. Actually, I lived in forms of mediocrity until life forced me to wake up. Otherwise, I would have stayed in mediocrity for the rest of my life.
Yeah, powerful example, babe. Absolutely. So you can see how, these examples shape the way we live our lives, and they shape the experiences we have. And the last level, and then we'll talk about how do we unwind all this. But the last level is fanaticism, level 5. And I think we all kind of know what fanatics are, but sometimes we have become a fanatic as well, and we have to admit that.
Oh, okay. There's this movie that I kept seeing as I was reading this book.
So saying.
Real fast. It's Robert De Niro's The Fan.
Oh my goodness.
That movie was
perfect example of the fanatic.
Of what that can look like. And it could also show what the end could be. It could be really destructive, fatal attraction, like kind of like with me or completely against me, and won't live with anything else. Extremes. So in this level, you worship your team. And if you see an opposing team, they are your enemy. Your team is the real team, the one true path. I just can't help throwing that in. The one way, the one true God, for example. And everything else is a fake and a lie. And it's not true. It's a fraud. That is fanaticism. Which is also talking badly about what is not, right?
Right.
It's almost corralling you into,
it's like everything else is wrong.
Right.
And, and in this way, your family has to root for your team or follow your religious beliefs, or they are disinherited. They are tossed out on their asses and goodbye. So that's fanaticism. And your belief can even cause you to lose respect for humanity. As we've seen over in the Middle East right now, we can lose respect for humanity itself. A true fan is willing to fight and die for his team. And everybody thinks they're right. So there's no end to the bloodshed. And, Don Miguel says this could even happen over a sports team, like fanaticism, like you were talking about with the Fan movie. That can even happen. And he gives an example of, in Europe, there was a big name team that was relegated to secondary division, and a fan actually went home and hung themselves because of that loss. That's how drastic it can be. And so when we're, if we're in that place, what do we do? And that's what we're going to talk about now. So he has some advice for how to unwind all this. And it all comes down to asking yourself that question that we mentioned at the beginning, which is knowledge controlling you, or are you controlling knowledge? And so at level 5, like we just talked about, fanaticism, in that level, my knowledge controls my every action. Like it is immersive. It's complete. Like you are the knowledge. That's it. Whatever you believe, the perspective, it is you are it. And there is no like you're totally merged with that. And anything that's not that is excluded. And so it's a rigid attachment to knowledge with an excessive intolerance of any opposing views. So this is the person who's like, the vaccine is the only way to do it. And if you're not doing that, I can't even talk to you. You're out of my family. Or if Christianity is the only way to be, and if you can't follow the guidelines of our denomination, then you're kicked out. And we're not going to, your family, but we're never talk to you again.
Or in other cases that I'm still hearing about for decades now, it's this person was LGBTQ and his family couldn't take it, so they kicked him out.
Yeah, you're excluded because you're not going to be our idea of heterosexual.
Yeah, or a version of heterosexual, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's a rigid attachment, intolerance of opposing views. We try to domesticate everyone around us to our belief system when we become tyrants. And so how do we move out of that? Is that we've got to see, we get to choose, again, it's choice. Choosing to see that our life and all of life is more valuable than any idea or belief. So it's kind of de-escalating the importance of belief and elevating the importance of life itself. And what is really hard at this level is to question yourself, but that's exactly what needs to happen to move out of this part, is questions and curiosity, because those offer a moment of clarity and they can kind of crack the veneer. Like any little bit of doubt or skepticism can actually open this up so there can be a movement to back down to level 4. And so questions might be, do I really believe this? Why do I believe this? And does this belief serve me? Powerful questions. So if you suspect yourself of being a fanatic on any one idea, right? Because it's not an overall fanaticism. It's just like, I'm a fanatic about this one thing, and I cannot, like, Starbucks is the best coffee and I cannot tolerate anything other than that, right? For example.
Or it can go up to things like, oh, I'm a parent and this is how you're supposed to raise a kid. And if you do anything
this is the only
that,
way.
And you eventually learn in elementary school, at least I did, that, oh, there's a lot of other ways to raise kids. You know, I was a bit of a helicopter parent. So I was like, everything had to be perfect and everything fit. And then I realized how big a world it is out here when I started being forced to ask the question, okay, what if there's a lot more ways to go around that could create a wonderful, stable environment for your child by focusing on their spirit and them individually, not what your family taught you the generation before. I had several hooks that popped in there. It's like, well, this was the right way because I turned out great. So they need to get exactly what I got.
Yeah. So another thing that's like happens with fanaticism is that it's like those blinders we talked about that are all closed in. So that the reason why people become fanatical is that there's nothing in their environment that challenges their assumptions. Like there's nothing coming in. They've only hanging out with like-minded people. And then they're not putting themselves in any other space where they might confront different information. And it's like it's a life that's very closed in.
The YouTube effect.
And so if you find a life that's very closed in, meaning that everybody you know agrees with you 100%, then you're probably fanatical about that thing because you don't have other points of view being expressed. So just something to think about as you evaluate yourself after this call or by reading that book. Powerful book. And let's see. So level 4. So when we ask questions, does this belief actually serve me? Like I asked with my dad, does my belief in my path serve me to try to force him into agreeing with me? And the answer was no. Like for me, I value the relationship more than the belief. And so I valued life more than my belief. So I wanted to connect with my dad and support my dad. And so I was willing to hold my belief for myself, but also hold that his belief is right for him. And this is where I really started learning, because I love my dad, right? So I had so much respect for my dad. And respect is also part of this. So when we can respect the other person, what we can do is we can say, I can respect that this is your truth. And I can also respect that this is my truth. And somehow both of these things can be true at the same time through this powerful universe we live in. And that's where I got to with my dad, is that recognition. And so I could move out of fanaticism and I could move into internalization, right? So we move into the next level. And in level 4 internalization, my identity in the form of my knowledge gives me the rules and guidelines by which I live my life. And so sometimes this is me, you know, like I'm a medicine woman. I use tobacco. I have things that I live my life by, and I light my altars, and I do all these things. And I've internalized it as part of my identity. It's part of the way I live my life. And so I'm aware of that. And this is where it gets tricky, is that our identity becomes the model by which we accept ourselves. Our internal narrators set the conditions by which we domesticate our identity. And we project a false image of self so that we can be accepted by ourselves and by others. And so anytime that I notice that, I move myself out of internalization by recognizing the attachment, which is actually based in conditional love. So for example, if I believe that I need to light my altars every single day in order to be a good medicine person, I've got to start my day by opening sacred space and lighting my altars, and then say one day I don't do it because I'm on a trip, or if I'm really internalized in that belief, I will judge myself for not lighting the altars.
Self-condemnation.
I will condemn myself. I'll be like flogging myself for not doing it.
And in the 4 agreements,
and that's conditional love.
In the 4 agreements, what's often mentioned is the death by 1,000 punishments. You pay for the same thing. You go to the store and you buy it 1,000 times. And after a while, when you think of it, like, it's like, I don't have to pay for this more than once, maybe twice, right?
And that's why we practice the 4 agreements. So the pathway to move out of this internalization is to practice the 4 agreements, right? Be impeccable with your word, which means don't say mean things to myself, you know, don't say mean things about Kerri, because that's going against myself. Don't take things personally. Don't make assumptions, and do my best. That's why we practice the 4 agreements in our inner medicine training and in this community, is because it's really, really powerful way to break that internalization so we can come back down into level 3 out of level 4. So we can release those ideas and liberate ourselves more to dance and play with life. And so that 5th agreement also of skepticism, be skeptical. That's another part of this. It's like, I'd be skeptical of myself. Does it really make a big difference if I skip one day and I don't light the altars? Does it really make that big of a difference? And so I'll run the experiment and I'll be like, well, today I'm not doing it. And then part of me goes, oh no. And then a part, you know, the brain, the stories in the mind. And then I'll go, okay, let's see what happens. Let's just see how the day goes. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, it's not create a narrative around it. Right?
But I'm not, because otherwise I'm creating dogma, as Akeem was pointing to, because it can become dogma. It can become fanatical if we don't ever question ourselves, even in our spiritual practice. And so this is just, I play games. I always invite people in inner medicine training to run experiments, like run experiments, opening sacred space every day. If you forget a day, notice what happens, run the experiment. You don't know until you experience it. So yeah, so moving out of internalization back into, you know, this, moving out of internalization back down into level 3 is moving back down into identity. So in this way, when we practice the 4 agreements and we practice the 5th agreement, we can come back down into level 3 about that belief. And when we have identity, what we're doing is we're saying, I identify myself with my knowledge, although I use it to see and understand the world. So now it's not about I use it to figure out if I'm a good person. It's I just use this knowledge to understand the world, to see it through a perspective. This is way more healthy way of being with the beliefs.
And it's so much easier to let go of guilt, like what Tara was just saying, you know, guilt being a habit. You know, it's a learned thing, right? And so we're also learning to decondition ourselves from these patterns, one thought at a time.
Exactly. One belief at a time. The knowledge is not attached to your worth anymore. Exactly. In identity level 3, the knowledge is not attached to your self-worth. It's simply knowledge that you identify with as a way of seeing and understanding the world. But it's not about your self-worth. But the thing is that you start to lose awareness of the line that separates life and the reflection of life in the mirror. So this is where we begin to believe the reflection is the truth, rather than the truth is the truth.
That is awesome.
And so that is just a distinction to track within yourself, is that with identity, it gets blurry now, so you start to lose, you think the reflection of life is the truth, but it's simply a reflection. So you want to come, awareness and deliberate choice. Because sometimes we fall asleep, right? And that's why I'm sharing, like, this is such a powerful book. Akeem picked a great book.
There's also this, I may have mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again. There's, in some Native American texts, there speaks about, there's this tribe, and this tribe has a segment for every part of their population. This is the healer. This is the priest. This is the one that takes care of the livestock. This is okay. So everyone's got roles. And then there's this one weird role that was appointed. It's the person that does everything in reverse, rides his horse backwards. Why would someone want to live like that? Well, come to find out, we have places that show up like that in society. We tend to label them people with issues with mental health. But what they do is they help us check what is reality, what is sanity, and are we really living in a sane way? Or have we all agreed by consortium that this is sanity, so we always do this? So the person who rides an opposite questions that.
Yeah, these are the disruptors. Exactly. But even that can become an identity. Being a disruptor can become an identity. And so you got to watch that one, you guys.
Both of us have been disruptors for a lot of our lives in one way, shape, or form.
You can be like, oh, I took the red pill. That's completely an identification.
Yeah, red pill.
And you could internalize that. Yeah. So you gotta not believe it. You can't believe yourself. And this is why Don Miguel Ruiz says in the Mastery of Love book, he says, don't believe me, don't believe yourself, and don't believe anybody else.
I get you said that.
Because it's just at the level of identity, it's just a reflection that you're choosing to identify with, so that you can perceive life in a certain way. It gives you an understanding of life by looking through that lens. And so by becoming aware of yourself without identifying yourself, you can take the mask off. You can say, the mask is not me. And then you're free to take any direction in life. And you have the power, you've reclaimed the power of yes and the power of no. Because if you are identified, you don't have the power of yes and no. Because what you're identifying with has got a certain, like, for example, if you're a healer, well, you're not supposed to drink a glass of wine, so like that's bad. And then you can start labeling things as bad or good. There's like a whole rule book that goes along with all of these things. And so sometimes I'll just break that rule just to test myself. Like, is that even true? Like, is it even true that I can't show up at a high vibration the next day? Is that really true? And then I'll test myself and find out. And sometimes I'll find out, oh, I'm really hungover today, and other times I'll find out it was fine. It doesn't matter. So like, I poke at it all the time because I'm one of those people that is a perfectionist. So, perfectionists, you guys, we can all get trapped in these identities and internalization story, like really big time, because we're trying to do it perfectly. But like, we got to question what is perfect. So if you show up and you don't need to identify yourself, like if I went to, a networking meeting, and instead of standing up and saying, I'm a medicine woman, I'm this, I'm that, I just said, hi, I'm Kerri. Nice to meet everybody. And then I just sat down. I don't need to, I can just show up as me. Like the energy speaks for itself. I don't actually need to say who or what I am or what I do. Right. And when I can do that, I've released myself from the identity. I don't need to put a label on myself. I don't need the big bio. I don't need any of that anymore for my self-worth. I don't need it. And I don't need it to view life through. I don't need people to view me. This is the other part, not only me viewing, but other people viewing me through that lens. Because the moment you say it, you've created a perception of yourself that other people are now going to perceive you through. Right. And so you may or may not want that. So when you're not attached to being identified in a certain way, you can lose the attachment and just show up. And that's how you move yourself back into preference. You take the mask off. So when you go back down into preference, I use knowledge as the tool by which I engage my preferences in life. So, and he talks about controlled folly. Controlled folly is a Toltec teaching, the awareness and honoring of self as we engage the people around us who project an image or mask onto us. But at this level of attachment, we don't forget that we're not the mask. We remember, I am not that mask they're projecting on me. And we just remember we're playing a game. In this game, I'm wearing the witch costume. In this game, I'm wearing the princess costume. We just remember we're playing a game. I'm wearing the medicine woman costume, you know? And so, but I am me. And at this level of attachment, we know our authentic self, and we know that we are simply in preference in the moment, simply in preference for me to be the medicine woman. Just a preference. Don't have to be that in order to be okay. Don't have to have other people see me that way in order to be okay. And so by realizing you can move in any direction in the moment, you have preference and you can let go of the preference. You can engage or disengage your preference at will. That's power. That is very powerful. And so then we get down to level 1, back where we started, the authentic self. You know, and at the authentic self, I am a living being, regardless of my knowledge, which only exists because I exist. And so we have the freedom to evolve as life evolves and to engage the people we love without the need to domesticate them to our point of view. And when we're in this, we're, as Akeem often says, I'm invisible. You talk about invisibility, transparency, invisibility. And when you don't need to be seen a certain way, you're invisible.
I can laugh and I'm not attached to it. This has even happened before, like meeting some of my old bosses. You know, there was one particular, we went out to eat dinner a few weeks ago and came across one of my old managers. Like, he's not my manager. He's my boss's 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 boss. And he showed up with his family. I didn't say, oh, hi, good to see you again. No. My heart came out. And I said, D, oh, wow, it's you. How are you doing? You know, I was just coming from my authenticity. You know, I wasn't creating something. I was just expressing naturally how I was. And so there's one little thing. This is something I never told you before, Kerri.
Oh my gosh, it's being revealed right now. Yes.
I figured out the same secret that your dad figured out. You're not so attached to your identity the more you lose things.
Oh, because he's always losing his wallet and his phone and everything. My dad did the same thing. He couldn't keep track of any of that stuff. It was gone all the time.
Well, we keep a track with our computer passwords. We can log right into our computer and, oh yeah, there's my stuff. Oh, Evernote. Yeah, oh, I remember my password. So my impromptu challenge, my fun, playful way, pick something that you won't miss, but something that you create a narrative. Go through that first step 1 and step 2, like Kerri was just saying, and then set it as an object on something, and then walk away and forget where it went. See if you can create a situation where you put something out and then you're okay to lose it, and then test your attachment to it. The more you talk about it and the more that you get attached, that could be a little a muscle flexing, so to speak.
This reminds me actually of when I was training at the Four Winds Light Body School, and we were making our mesas. We had our medicine stones on the inside, our kuyas, and we would take those kuyas outside to the desert during retreat, and we would do an earth painting, and then we were told to put our kuyas inside the earth painting. And some people went back the next morning and their kuyas were gone. And that was really stressful because people were like, this is my medicine stone. This is my, I did, oh my gosh. And they had to face that like attachment, right, to the medicine stones. And oh my gosh, how stressful. And I never had that happen to me, but boy, some people did. And I was like, how are you moving through that? And they said, well, I just decided it must have outgrown it. And so I just got another kuya and started all over again. And so that's that lesson, right? That lesson of letting go of our attachments, and like, it's not the mesa that's your power. It's the mesa is just reflecting to you your power. The mesa supports you to acknowledge your power and to anchor that frequency of your power, but it's not your power. Your power is inside. And so if you lost it, you could just make another one. It's fine. You know, you would just find another one, you find some more stones, but you're the creator. You're the essence. You're the energy. Sensei wants to join us for this broadcast. Hello, Sensei.
He wants to run away. I co-opted bring him in because I wanted to pet him.
So how have you guys liked this conversation? Like tell us in the chat, like one key takeaway that's really sticking with you right now. What's one nugget that you want to share from today that you found the most powerful? Compassion for our situation. Yeah, without compassion, it's hard to let go of things. You know, compassion makes it easier to let go and to let things evolve.
Any others?
What's your favorite? What's your key takeaway?
Heart expression. Tara was kind of hinting at that, right? Leveling the field with my heart and being transparent, being caring, and wanting to share, like care for each and every one of you. Anyone that's attending, anyone that's watching this telecast, either now or in the future, that you can actually feel two people being authentic, being truthful, and expressing our real life experiences with you.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And I see some of our others. Nancy said, giving up attachments. Absolutely. Erica said, just a reminder of how to examine my attachment to things. Yeah. And Donna says, different degrees of attachment in different circumstances. And Nancy says, easier to give up attachments at my age. Yeah, the older we get, the easier it is, because the ultimate attachment is our life, right? Yeah. I mean, our incarnation, our body, our vessel, that's the ultimate attachment. And that's what that's so sexy that you said that, Nancy, because that's what my greatest excitement is about inner medicine training, is that giving up the attachment of your identity in the middle of the life. Like, rather than waiting until the end of the life when it's going to be taken from you by the spirit of death, it's like we can call on the spirit of death in the middle of the life when we're ready to let go of ourselves.
Meet it so you can do it consciously.
And to release this mask we've been wearing, this persona, this personality. Yeah, and consult death as an advisor, Donna. Absolutely. And I love working with that energy of the spirit of death. That this is actually what I did when I became Kerri Hummingbird, was that I had a different name and a different life. And I got this sign that from spirit of this hummingbird. And the longer I sat with it, the more I realized I was going to take that on as my name, because as a woman, you know, we are usually given the name of the guy. And I was like, well, what's a name that's authentic for me? What's just my name? Not like because I married somebody, but what's my name? And when I just became Kerri Hummingbird, it changed everything, because Kerri Hummingbird could be whatever I wanted to be. And I started asking the question, what would Kerri Hummingbird do? And I didn't even know who I was. What would Kerri Hummingbird do? What would Kerri Hummingbird do with every question and decision? And here I am today, and I am Kerri Hummingbird, and I created myself. So isn't that cool? And now I'm also Kerri Hummingbird Sami, because I got married. So I did take on that last name, but it completely works for me because Sami means the light. And Sami is the name that the Quechua people use to describe light energy, Sami. And then they have a name for heavy energy, dark energy called Hucha. So like Sami, I had been calling in Sami in healings for years, and then he walked in the door. So
there you go. And see, now in my case, I came in the picture not knowing Quechua and knowing that my last name meant listener from Eastern Africa. So that was like, okay, I'm a listener. I'm going to listen. And I'm going to enjoy this. And I've been living that my whole life. And then I show up with this one, and she's like, I hear angels laughing at me. They're like laughing at me. Why? Because his last name is Sami. He's the light, right? Yep,
it really is this way. Erica was there. She witnessed it. And she says, you weren't Kerri Hummingbird very long before you became Sami. That's true. A few years. Yeah. Well, so go with the flow. I called him in. Absolutely, Tara.
So the last name Sami is just an addition to.
It's just an addition. But like, let it flow. Let it flow. I've even been asking myself lately, am I attached to being Kerri Hummingbird? Like, what if there's a new journey to have? I don't know. I promise I won't change my name again because that's just so much work for everybody. Plus, I have to go get a new license.
I have enough coyote in me where I would probably do that.
Probably just go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
But I mean, like everything is about the name, right? So what are you attached to? And then I just actually went through a whole process where I released attachment to being a mother in the light, that in the way that I have been for the last 25 years. And now I'm letting that die. I'm letting that renew. I'm letting new energy come into that, like new ideas about it, new expression of it, new energies, by letting go of my attachments for working out the way I wanted it to work out. And I could just evolve. Exactly.
That reminds me of that Erykah Badu song, Bag
So good
Lady.
Seeing you guys. Yeah.
Remember that Erykah Badu song, Bag Lady?
Yeah. I had to dump my bags, Bag Lady.
Yeah.
Erykah Badu.
So brokenhearted, she can't let go.
Yeah, you got to let it go.
So
pack light. Pack light, everybody. Pack light. I would sing for you, but I won't. Not right this moment. But pack light. Go listen to the Erykah Badu song. I love Erykah Badu. All right, you guys. So great. I'm so glad you guys came to join us tonight. And just letting you know, like, this is a monthly meeting that we open up to the public because we really want to offer this to as many people as want to receive it. We put it out on YouTube, so you can find the recording. We'll send it out to the replay to anybody who is registered. And if you want to join us in our special Telegram chat community, well, I'm going to put the information in the chat for you. And if you want to join, it'll also be in your follow-up email, and it will be in the show notes if you're listening to this on YouTube. And you can join us for just $52 for the whole year, the entire year, just because we just want to have community. We just like it. If you are a student, an inner medicine training student, it's included for you. So you don't need to send us any money if you're going to join us as a student of inner medicine training. It's all included. We have a nice Telegram chat. We have conversations. Akeem offers daily inspiration in there. And we always have a book of the month. So this one has been juicy. We're going to be looking at this the rest of the month in the Telegram chat if you want to come explore it with us. And next month, we haven't decided yet. So we'll let you know. Some other cool book. We'll let you know what it is. And we love you. And we hope that you have a beautiful evening. And we hope that you let go of some attachments. Put them in the fire.
That's right, Nancy. And attachments to outcomes, goodbye.
Love you all. Have a wonderful evening. Be blessed. And we'll see you next time on Soul Nectar Tribe. Bye for now, everyone.